we are again, recording yet another video for posterity. You'll have to excuse the light levels here. As usual, it is night, and as usual, I'm going to be playing around with the lights quite a bit, because as we know by this point, lighting is one of the key, if not the key element to making these gloves look the way they do on screen, and certainly in one's possession. And, you know, a lot of things are hidden. A lot of things are hidden by light and accentuated, and in other aspects, not. You know, if we're talking about reference, that I always have up in some semblance, way, shape, or form. That's the Becker Hero. You know, you see details that you're trying to do, and obviously I'm sitting here trying to do them on a part 2 versus my Becker clone. And, you know, again, we're at the 95% level, as far as I'm concerned, of me being really comfortable of the accuracy of this thing, and the templates that I'm using right now that I'm doing, which we're talking now about the DESA 2.0 Ultimate Edition templates for this particular Part 2 glove. And what we're really talking about are these 3 knuckle pieces here. Actually, that one's on its way. These are my build tips. You see things on my dresser and desk and things happening. This is my fine-tuning station that I went ahead and created because my back at 42 years old is really starting to hurt, even though I'm working out like a fiend. So this part 2, I have a couple of indexes which suffice for the index and the ring, and then the ring, and then I have a faux, pretty close metal tip. These are by no means, these are my original DESAs before the 2.0 even, when I was just fine-tuning the shape. So they're close enough for rock and roll to look at, you know. And the backplate also is these are my build templates to start bracing and fitting. A lot of the bends are if the shapes aren't entirely accurate on the backplate and the tips, the bend patterns are, so it lays pretty proper. And the part 2 is a little bit more, it's got a tiny bit more torque going on than Becker clone today, as the glove is today, and especially against the part 1, those differences, and we've talked about that in other videos. So the backplate is a little smaller by about 3/16 in diameter than the actual, and the bend pattern is very close, but just a little bit too pronounced. But in terms of being accurate, but it does suffice for my purposes on the table here. And the lighting scheme that I use when I build this stuff is pretty extreme to pick up all these little, you know, puckers and dents and all these things that are the source of so much contention in the community, and certainly, you know, in my circles and experience with building them, but are in fact there to varying degrees. And of course, you know, you always have some things you do a little bit too much, or not quite as bit, but those are within the 5%, so we don't worry about that. But you know, things like this little double dip here on the index, and you know, the little nick mark, I call it, that goes right across here on the ring, this little nick mark indent. That's all there. You can see it in certain lighting schemes. Generally the most severe, which is why I work under these, because once you back them off, all those shapes tend to kind of fade away, and things fall into shadow, and you don't really see things clearly anymore. Fingers will look fatter, fingers will look thinner. I'm taking the time to do this because I'm spending some time finishing up with this particular glove for a client, and thought it was appropriate to check out the progress, as it were, and see how we're matching things up. It's all about the matchup. Alright, so I've gone ahead and fixed the lighting scheme a little bit, so we should be in full HD now. As full HD as my antiquated camera will allow, and we're just going to go ahead and show this off a little bit. under really harsh lights to see how we did, and talk a little bit about the next phase here as I'm winding through the evening. Yeah, that's, I've shown a lot of these templates so far. I haven't shown, I've shown bits and pieces of the knuckles and the tips, but I've definitely shown this baby. You guys all have this by now. Your backplates are all looking really good lately. I cheese. Get it? I cheese? Cheesy teas? Hey, what do you want? It's 1:07 a.m. Alright, so, part 2 well underway, and just a couple things to talk about. It goes through so many processes, and as many of you are painfully aware at this point, at least I am, my magic tool broke. This is my original magic tool. Yeah, going to frame this up for posterity eventually, and it's been replaced with the new one. But, unfortunately, with the new one, I have to, the great thing about, this baby was she was all worn down and soft and supple. And this one, man, I sanded to get all the corners down, and it's just, what I need is time. What I need is time and pressure to really wear it down. So I'm having to be very, very careful. It's almost too much. It's too strong. A tool. There's no give to it when I'm making. When I build these pieces, all this work that you guys see is done with this. I mean, the basic bends. And I've talked about this. I have my stages where I'm tapping it against a pipe in various segments and sizes of pipe, and then I take it with, my pliers. But I mean, here, guys, my pliers are all taped off, and my hammers are all taped off, all the stuff. I can't tape this guy off because it's pointless. I need to feel given the metal. So what happens is I get these little, you're trying not to get all these nick marks and toothing, and inexorably I have to go, when I'm done with all the shaping, which I have to do, actually, this evening, or at some point during the process, I go and I fine sand this whole thing, all the edges. I go over all the edges and get rid of as much of the toothing as I possibly can, and round it off, and varying degrees of grit, and even on the corners. And it's got its base caramel. I mean, this is the luxury of the part 2 is, and this may look a little red depending on the lighting or whatever. This is the base tone, that I love to talk about so much, and it affords me an accurate, visual representation, if you will, of what I'm going for. The more you can see, I'm always trying to help and give advice. I guess that's what this is. The more you can see of a finished product on your desk, if you want to call it a product, the more the more interesting your task is going to be, and certainly the more enticing the progress, your own progress, is going to be, through that visual rep that you have, even if it's just a matter of having the color, the appropriate starting color, and it's very close to the part 2. It's got no aging on it, obviously, but the part 2, was painted over. The copper was all refinished, so it was a completely different color than the part 1, obviously. So the luxury here is that I've actually got a very close proximity of the color to work with, and the basic hues of the glove. So even right here, it looks pretty damn authentic, even though it's not. I have a lot to do yet. So, things like toothing I watch out for at this stage. But, God damn it, I look at this thing and I forgive it. If you want me to be totally transparent, I still, to this day, and these are the things that I let go. Because so much of this damn thing is totally dead on, in my opinion. I spend a lot of time. I mean, if I'm building most of the bends with this tool, tweak, little micro movements, I'm going to forgive certain things, like the fact that I inevitably, this is always about a 16th, this line, this crease, and that is always about a 16th too high up the stall. Now, we're talking a 16th, which is about, as the crow flies, that much. I'm really not going to waste my time going, oh my God, it could have been, it's like right here. So what? 95 percentile. You know, that's the only really discrepancy on this glove so far on these pieces. And if that's the only, we'll call it a goof. It's not really a goof. It's just a forgivable exception. I'm going to leave it because, you know, to go ahead and rebuild the entire finger, you know, if it was like 3 or 4 things that were off by a 16th, then you're starting to really get off, you know, off track, and I would go, time to redo it. But I'm going to leave stuff like that, you know, and you guys will deal with it. You don't even see it. You won't even notice. And it still holds up. So I have the problem on the Becker clone, stuff like that. You know, Becker clone, by the way, if you're looking at it against this, aside from the fact that it's way in the background, there are some subtle differences. This is, you know, like I said, this is my 2.0 Ultimate Edition armature, at least these 3 prongs and this guy, against my build piece and my build pieces, my bracing pieces. You know, these are my final. This is my final armature, and they're starting to make their way into the assembly line. I'll explain more about that later. So there are some subtle differences, mainly the templates. My final, you know, template tweaks between this and this. You know, some differences, and we'll talk more about them later. But some of them are pretty evident, and we'll just keep on keeping on. All right, so this is getting long. Let's start rocking these guys out. Good morning, everybody. Little natural daylight. Start the next phase of this video progression. And the next phase, obviously, is these beasties. We're going to swap out, these are the undersides, by the way. We're going to swap out the final tips for my build pieces, and then go ahead and obviously also take the master backplate and cut that sucker. Cut a new one and swap that out for the build backplate, and get this popped on. And we'll see where the progression takes us. I've already got the blades separately knocked out. It's almost the first thing I do at this point because they're just such a bitch. So that's a nice bit of progression that I don't have to worry about. But you can see, you know, the daylight just, again, I should have been a lighting artist because it really does fascinate me. And it really is something I like to talk about. It really does make the thing look completely different depending on the lighting setup. Right now we're in natural. So a lot of people also ask me what this is. This was sent to me by a client. I've talked about this. You see this sometimes in the background. Years ago. 11 years ago, I think, I got this. 10 or 11 years ago. And it's all cross-hatch pencil. So sent to me by a fan, client, whatever you want to call it. And I just really like it. So I always keep it up. Anyway, I've been working like a fiend, and I got I got stuff planned for the weekend. So I'm going to see if I can get these tips done today, and we'll probably start the drilling and the leather cutting tomorrow on this guy, and then this guy over here needs to be fast-tracked. The aging is underway on those. So, yeah, 2 gloves on the table. Let's continue on, and see you in a minute. Okay. Hey. So, taking a little break. We have some good news, and we have some pretty bad news, actually. The good news is, let's take a look. And I thought I'd show a couple of pieces here. The finished aged pieces for the part 2 against a pre-aged. And, let's see if we get a little better light here. There we go. Looking pretty sweet. Looking pretty sweet. Natural daylight. So these are the, the 2 finished dealios for the part 2, and I'm going for essentially this guy right here. This is what I match my aging against. This shot, a couple others similar to. So we're getting all that nice scorching, really, really subtle. right? Pretty cool. And, got the pinky here and some other pieces and Becker clone and all the usual stuff, and we're going to go ahead and age this one next. Bad news is this. My computer's dark, and computer's dark for a reason. Dell sucks, and it's looking pretty much like... excuse me while it's looking pretty much like the computer's fried. Now, I managed to go in and back up about a quarter of my files. Lost a lot, still have a lot. Got some important stuff, got the documentary files out. We'll see if it comes back. I don't know when I'm going to be able to upload this. I'll probably have to edit it at the work computer, at least I have that. And my intro, my 3D intro, I do have that. I have that at 720 HD, but I have it on YouTube. I don't know if I was able to grab the original files. I have the files, but I was just grabbing the actual video completed file when, yeah. So, we shall see. Onward and upward, back to the part 2. Alright, well, here we go. Getting our second glove well underway, with third coming along pretty quickly behind. Still stuck on my piece of shit laptop because the blue screen of death, which actually struck before this blue screen of death, is what I'm dealing with presently. But it's always nice to see things coming together, so I've got some aged pieces, and still got to do that pinky, but y'all know I did the pinky last on all gloves. That's why there's no pinky on that one. And lots of tips to do, but we're well underway. Alright. Middle tip takes shape as the index tip is finished. And looking pretty good so far. Got a long way to go though. Just starting the main bends. Alright, index tip and middle tip are done. Looking pretty good. Very happy. Looks great. Nicely done. Okay, onward and upward. Final 2 pieces for the part 2 here for a very good client of mine. Nicely aged and finished. Put a little torching on the tips, get some drills going, and pop these suckers together. Index and middle. 2 least favorites, but the 2 that look the best every time. Is it live or is it Memorex? I have no idea. It's just really early or late, depending on your point of view. So let's take a look at what we got on the table. So we've got a lot of stuff going on, right? And I'm going to try to get the best vantage point I can to show you what we're going to be doing. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be soldering this blade here on this part 2, and let's take a look, see how that's going to go. Where's the blade? So
First thing I like to do is obviously get a measurement and make sure it fits, and I've gone ahead and I've ground down and aged and marred my part 2 blade. No idea what we're catching here, but you're going to get a basic crash course in Trav's methodology of making things stick. Alright. Oh, fuck. This is going to have to do. We're going to see. Now, ordinarily this ring does a bit of a kickback. It hyperextends. Actually, all the fingers hyperextend. If you guys didn't know that, you do now. To some degree. And, you know, it's always fun getting them exactly where they're supposed to be. Let's see. Measurement going. I usually eyeball my shit. I really, really do. It just suits me. And, you know, I mean, blades and things like that, you're always going to be a 16th off. Or the trick is to just get the maximum coverage of all your shit without gumming it up too much. Okay, well, it's going to be a little short, but what are you going to do? Okay. That's about right. So I see a lot of guys, I've seen some really cool shit, actually. A lot of guys have rigs that they made. Like actual soldering rigs that is so fucking cool. And maybe one day, I can see myself doing that. That would be pretty badass. But, for right now, it's not on the list of priorities. And I'm going to do it the way I've always done it. Which is a pain in the ass, definitely. But it's how I was brought up with this stuff. Yeah. And yeah, it seems to work. So, here we go. Got my blade C-clamped on. And this is the really tricky part. Let's move all this shit so we don't fuck it up. Okay. Yeah, it's really all about the bracing. I try to just basically brace it on its side. Oops. So it's immobile. And I usually, I'll have a rig, my own little version of a rig. There we go. And what I want to do, you can't really see it. The camera's attached to the chair. Is I'm going to come in here with my blowtorch in one hand. And I'm going to sit here with the torch. I'm going to heat it up on an angle. What this also does, I'll give you a hint, is it helps to finish the yellowing and caramel process and gives it some wear on part 2. So I'm going to sit here. I'm going to sit here with my torch. And I'm going to gently wash it over, really, really gently. And then I'm going to come in, and when it's ready, I'm just going to pop that on. Now, for all the little extra spills and stuff, I do that last. I do that separately. I go back and I C-clamp it again, so it doesn't fall off, and I'll put a little bit of flux on the little spots, and I'll sit there with a fine, I've got a fine, I want to call the brush, I've got a fine blowtorch, and I'll sit there and I'll just add them on at the end. So I haven't forgotten about them. And, you know, frankly, I see some guys, they spend a lot of time, we all try to match up the solder spills as best we can, but really I'm all for getting a good bond. It's going to be the same thing when I'm brazing these guys next year when I'm doing the full-on brazing effects. You know, it's authentic by nature. If it happens to look like the exact pattern, great. I'm not going to kill myself over it. As long as we get a rough approximation, I'm happy. So, let's prep this. This is really important. This can't be dirty. Woo. It's acid and it's burning my hand. Okay. So I have these really fine Q-tips that I use. Really, really fine. And I actually have 2 that fell in here. I'm going to soak this for a minute. In the flux. And then very, very gently, I apply it to the seam between the blade and the housing, the tip housing. And really try to get it liberally on there. More on the blade, though, is where you want it, because the blade takes longer to heat up. And you really only get one shot. So you got to be very, very diligent. the copper heats up by itself. So that looks pretty good. I got a nice seam going. Okay, here we go. And we're going to start this. See if we can get a good seam going. Shut the window. Unfortunately, if you blowtorch, like I do, you have to have the window shut. So let's get this rocking. Where's my lighter? Okay. I usually sit down when I do this, so this is going to be a real good experiment. Standing up. I'm not going to talk while I'm doing this. I'm waiting for the bubbling to start, and it has. Okay, good. Got it. Okay. Not bad. Let's see what it took. Could get a little bit more on there, actually. Let's see. Let's get talking to you guys while I'm doing this. This shouldn't be doing that. We're going to try and get a little bit more solder on here. Get a little bit more on the blade itself. Okay, that should be good. Let's see if we can do this. You got to kind of angle the blade a little. And with the solder drip where it's going to drip. I can pick it up on the other side, but I'd really like to get this side a little stronger. Okay, that's a little